Welcome back to Taiwan Now Look. Our guest today is Professor Chien-min Chao. He's a professor of Graduate Institute of Defense Studies at National Chengchi University. President, we've been talking about China's economic developments. But with the coming and the holding of the Summer Olympic Games in Beijing in August, people are also paying attention to the human rights situation in China. And some movie stars or directors of movies have been boycotting the Olympic Games. How's China's preparedness for this game?
I think China has made the Olympics a center of their policy. I think this is rather unusual. I think China has given the Olympic Games so much importance. This is not usual.
Is that good or bad for China?
I think this is mixed. Because I think it's very likely because China has a long time feels that the Western powers have been taken advantage of China's weakness. And China has been humiliated by Western so-called imperial powers since the mid-19th century. And today might be the time for China to rise again, so that, China to get strong and to get even with the West. I think whether that's that kind of vulnerable mentality that has given Chinese authorities and also people to make the games, this sporting event, such an important event, I wonder. So I think the games, seems to me the games have become very much part of the Chinese new nationalism. China is a rise. You see where we can hold the important world event, and the Olympics and so on and so forth. This is good in the sense that China views, many people in China view this event as an important step towards becoming an important or big country, big power. I think this is not necessarily bad. But what's bad is that China has attached so much importance to the games.
That's right.
So that for some people outside of China, people like Steven Spielberg, who is highly concerned about China's political development, who is not very happy about China's, government's concentrating on developing its economy without, thinking much about giving much progress to their human rights there. So there are quite a few people there outside of China who think, maybe it's time for you to also to relent the control on this political sector. You can certainly afford. You used to be poor, and you worry about your stability. But right now you're not so poor, so maybe you can relent a bit. I think some people argue that way. So since the Chinese government has made the games such an important event, that has given these people a very important channel to insert the influence and the pressure on the Chinese government. And that has put given this is additional kind of tidbit to the games.
That's right. But how's China's response to that kind of international concerns or even criticism?
I think China is also is aware of and also conscious of these pressure. Exactly because I think Chinese government and the Chinese people have given so much importance to the games. So I think they have to make a concession, because otherwise, if the Spielberg decision spilled over and creates more, people and brings more, repercussion, and more people will join in such a boycotting event, and then that won't be good. Even though the games can be held on time, and it might be a huge event, a big time event for the Chinese people and the government. But it won't look good for the government. So I think they are conscious of the problem, and they have also made some, although very small, concessions in order to accommodate the pressure.
But as you mentioned that this event has been seen by the leaders in Beijing more political than sporty or economic. In other words, that's a symbol of nationalism. But the concern for some people is that how about what would be the things after the Olympic Games? In other words, where and how they can vent that kind of nationalistic sentiment after the Olympic Games. What's your take on that?
Well, one thing is that China, if you're talking about free market economy, you have this cyclical trend the economy, you have a boom time, then you have bad times, right? Times like a recession when, economy just won't grow. And this is very normal because the market doesn't know anything. So people, they have to base on their decisions on trial and error.
Yeah.
So if you are investors, if you are company owners, you have industry, if you own a company or industry, you have to make a guess as to what kind of products the customers want and how much how they want.
Yeah.
This is calculated risk. But in a not so free economy, you won't have that kind of risk. Mm-hmm. So in the past decades, China doesn't have that problem. China's economy has been developing really very fast, without trouble without going kind of the bubble is still there.
That's
We
right.
have been talking for years that the bubble might burst, but it's still the bubble keeps growing.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think if you bring in the scenario of the Olympic Games, I think the Chinese government has been doing everything possible in their powers in order to make the games a successful one.
Yeah, that's right.
And to keep the economy well, is one of the very important tactics. Mm-hmm. But I think what after the games? I think whether how much longer can the Chinese government keep the economy develop, grow in such a double-digit rate? I think this is a $1 million question. Many economists wonder argue that it's about time for China's economy to set back a bit and to do some real adjustments. So I think this is one problem, and also in political sector. And Chinese government has been, trying very hard to maintain a kind of harmonious state. This might not be a it might not be a reality, but the Chinese government has been trying very hard to maintain the stability, or to present the society as a harmonious one. Yeah. But what after the games? Whether I'm sure the government can still keep order and the stability. But I think it would have to, the costs would have to be higher.
That's right. But for some people in the outside world, they've been hoping that with the more exposure of the Chinese people to the outside world, via Olympic Games, and there will be more freedom of media and so on, there will be democracy or political reforms from within. What's your view on that?
Well, I'm for the idea that it's inevitable that the economy is growing really very, very fast. I don't think everything else can be stagnant. I think the Chinese government in the past decades has been trying very hard to separate the two things and telling its people that economics is economics and politics is politics. Let's keep these two things separate and let's just concentrate on our resources and efforts to develop our economy and democracy brings instability and chaos. Let's not do it. I don't necessarily buy this logic because I think if you once it used to be Chinese society was under very tight control, and that was because the Chinese people did not have the freedom, political freedom, as well as economic freedom.
That's right.
The Chinese people weren't given the freedom to develop to get rich. And if you study politics, you understand economic freedom is the very foundation of democracy. You give the people the freedom of to develop its economy, to make their own living, to earn their own money. Then they will start become independent politically. They will, they can think independently. Yeah. But in the past, if you cannot be independent economically, there's no way you can be independent politically.
That's right. So eventually, China has to face this kind of political reform.
Yes, I think eventually, but how long it takes, that's everyone's guess.
That's right. Yeah. But one thing that could really affect China's future is not only within China, but also outside China.
Yes.
And Taiwan is such a factor.
Yes.
So when we come back, we'll talk about the prospect of relationship between Taiwan and China. Especially in Taiwan, we are going to have a presidential election. And we will be asking about your views about the future prospect of close trade talks after the election in Taiwan. And stay with us. We'll be back after these messages.